I have looked my mother in the eyes every single day for 12 years and pretended I don't know the truth. Every birthday cake she's baked me, every Christmas morning, every time she said, "You have your father's stubbornness," or "You get that temper from my side of the family." I've smiled and nodded and played along, carrying a secret so heavy it's reshaped my entire skeleton. I am not their daughter. I found the papers when I was 16, a box in the attic, buried under old tax returns and Christmas decorations. I was looking for my birth certificate, needed it for a driver's permit, and my mother was at work, so I went digging myself. The box was taped shut. Old tape, yellowed and peeling, it practically fell apart when I touched it. Inside, underneath some old photographs and a hospital bracelet too small to fit around my thumb, was a manila folder. Official looking, the kind of thing that holds mortgages and wills and life-altering legal documents. Certificate of Adoption, it read, and below that, my name. Well, not my name, my original name, Baby Girl Novak, born March 3rd, 1996. Birth mother, Catherine Novak. Birth father, unknown. I remember the exact sensation of reading those words. It was like the floor dropped out beneath me, like I was falling, except I was standing perfectly still in my parents' dusty attic, holding a piece of paper that rewrote everything I thought I knew about myself. Have you ever discovered something that split your life into before and after? Something that made you look back at every memory and see it differently? I need you to understand, I was 16 years old. I had a chemistry test the next day. I was worried about whether Jake Morrison would ask me to prom. And in a single moment, all of that became meaningless. Because I wasn't who I thought I was. I wasn't even who my name said I was. If you've ever had the ground disappear beneath you like that, drop a comment. Because I've never told anyone this story, and I need to know I'm not alone in carrying something this heavy. I put the papers back. I taped the box shut with fresh tape from the kitchen drawer. I went to my room, laid down on my bed, and stared at the ceiling until my mother came home from work and called me down for dinner. "Did you find your birth certificate?" she asked, stirring pasta on the stove. "Yeah," I lied. "It was in the filing cabinet." "Good, we'll go to the DMV Saturday." She had no idea that I'd just discovered the biggest lie of my life tucked away in a cardboard box like it was nothing, like it didn't matter, like the truth of who I was could just be stored with the Christmas ornaments and forgotten. That was 12 years ago. I'm 28 now. I have a job, an apartment, a life that looks normal from the outside. I come home for holidays. I call my mother every Sunday. I let her believe that nothing has changed, that I'm still her daughter in every way that matters. But every time she looks at me, I wonder, does she see me, or does she see the secret she's been keeping for almost 3 decades? And every time I look at her, I feel the weight of my own secret pressing down on my chest. Two people sitting across a dinner table, each hiding the same truth from the other. It would be funny if it weren't so sad. Let me tell you what it's like to live with a secret like this. At first, I was angry. Furious, actually. I would sit in class, staring at the back of someone's head, thinking, my whole life is a lie and nobody knows. I wanted to scream it, wanted to confront my parents, demand answers, force them to explain why they'd never told me. But I didn't. Partly because I was scared. Scared of what would happen to our family, to the carefully constructed normalcy we'd built. Scared of seeing my mother cry, or my father get that disappointed look he gets when something doesn't go according to plan. But mostly, I didn't say anything because of what else I found in that box. There were letters, handwritten on plain white paper. No return address, no signatures, just letters, dated over a span of about 5 years, from the year I was born until I was almost 5. "She's beautiful," one read. "I saw her at the park today. You've done such a good job with her, better than I ever could have." "Thank you for sending the photos," said another. I know we agreed no contact, but I can't help watching from a distance. I just need to know she's okay. Please don't hate me for giving her up. I had no choice. I was 18 and alone, and I couldn't give her what she deserved. You can. Please believe that I did it because I loved her. The letters were from my birth mother, Catherine Novak, the woman who gave me up and then spent years watching from the shadows, too afraid to make contact, but too attached to walk away completely. Reading those letters changed something in me. The anger didn't disappear, it just got complicated, mixed with grief and confusion and a strange kind of sympathy for this woman I'd never met. She loved me, that much was clear. And my parents, my adoptive parents, they loved me too. They'd taken me in, raised me, given me everything. They'd kept my birth mother's letters, which meant they hadn't tried to erase her completely. So who was I supposed to be angry at? I put the letters back with the rest of the documents and sealed the box again. And I made a decision. I wouldn't confront anyone. I wouldn't demand answers. I would just live with it. Carry the secret the same way my parents carried theirs. Maybe that was cowardly. Maybe I should have ripped the bandage off, forced the conversation, dealt with the fallout. But I was 16. I didn't have the tools to process something this big. So I buried it. I went to prom with Jake Morrison. He was a terrible kisser. I graduated high school. I went to college 3 states away, telling myself distance would make it easier. It didn't. Every phone call home was an exercise in performance. Every "I love you, honey" from my mother was a knife in my chest. Not because I doubted she meant it, but because I couldn't say it back without feeling like a fraud. I love you too, but do you love me? Or do you love the daughter you pretended I was? I never said that out loud, never even came close. I just smiled and nodded and played my part, year after year, until the secret became so familiar it was like a second skin. You'd be amazed what you can get used to, given enough time. I told myself I didn't care about my birth mother. Catherine Novak was a stranger, a name on a piece of paper, a ghost who'd haunted my childhood without ever actually appearing. She'd made her choice to give me up, to watch from a distance, to eventually stop writing letters and disappear completely. I didn't owe her anything. That's what I told myself for years. Through college, through my first job, through the string of relationships that never quite worked out because I couldn't let anyone get too close. I didn't need to know where I came from. I had a family. I had a life. But the curiosity never went away. It would hit me at random moments, sitting in a doctor's office, filling out family medical history forms and leaving half of them blank. Watching movies about reunited birth parents and adopted children, feeling my chest tighten in ways I couldn't explain. Looking in the mirror and wondering whose eyes I had, whose chin, whose crooked smile. My parents, my adoptive parents, are both short, brown hair, brown eyes. My mother is soft and round. My father is wiry and thin. I'm tall, 5'9", with red hair that came from nowhere, green eyes that match no one in my family photos, freckles that my mother used to call angel kisses. Who did I look like? Whose genes were running through my veins? The questions accumulated over the years, piling up like unpaid bills. And finally, on my 26th birthday, I decided I couldn't ignore them anymore. I hired a private investigator. His name was Dennis, and he worked out of a cramped office above a laundromat in Queens. He didn't ask why I wanted to find Catherine Novak. He just took my money and promised results within 30 days. It took him 12. The file he gave me was thin, just a few pages, but those pages rewrote my understanding of everything. Catherine Novak had died. She died 3 years after I was born, a car accident on an icy road in Minnesota. She was 21 years old. I stared at that death certificate for a long time, trying to process what it meant. The woman who wrote those letters, who watched me in the park, who begged my parents to believe she gave me up out of love,
She'd been dead for almost my entire life. But that wasn't the part that destroyed me. The part that destroyed me was the other document in Dennis's file. Catherine Novak had a sister, a younger sister, only 15 when Catherine died. That sister had been devastated by the loss and by the revelation that Catherine had given up a baby just 3 years earlier, a baby that no one had ever told her about. The sister's name was Margaret Novak, but I knew her by a different name. I knew her as Aunt Maggie. I need to stop here and explain who Aunt Maggie was in my life. She wasn't my actual aunt. I knew that much even as a kid. She was a family friend, one of those adults who showed up at birthday parties and holiday gatherings without any clear connection to the family tree. My mother always introduced her as Aunt Maggie, who we've known forever. Forever, that was the word she used. Maggie was a constant presence throughout my childhood. She remembered every birthday, sent cards with handwritten notes, gave me gifts that were always weirdly perfect, like she knew me better than she should have. A first edition copy of my favorite book for my 13th birthday, concert tickets to a band I'd mentioned liking once in passing. She never married, never had kids of her own. She lived alone in a small house about 40 minutes from my parents, close enough to visit but far enough to maintain distance. I liked her.
Everyone liked her. She was warm and funny and always seemed genuinely interested in my life, more interested sometimes than my own parents. But she was also careful. There was always a line she wouldn't cross. She'd ask about my friends, but never push for details. She'd hug me, but let go quickly, like she was afraid of holding on too long. She'd look at me sometimes with an expression I couldn't read, something between sadness and wonder. I never understood that expression. Now I did. Margaret Novak, Aunt Maggie, was my biological aunt, my birth mother's sister. She'd somehow found me, worked her way into my parents' lives, and spent 25 years watching me grow up from a front row seat, the same thing her sister had done before she died. The letters suddenly made sense. The ones that mentioned watching me at the park, that thanked my parents for the photos. Catherine had been watching me in the beginning, and when she died, Maggie had taken over. But how? How had Maggie found me? How had she convinced my parents to let her into our lives? Did they know who she really was? Questions exploded in my brain, each one leading to 3 more. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into a darkness I couldn't see the bottom of. I did the only thing I could think of. I went to see Aunt Maggie. She lived in the same small house she'd always lived in, a little Cape Cod with blue shutters and a garden full of wildflowers. When I pulled into the driveway, unannounced, on a Tuesday afternoon, she was outside, kneeling in the dirt, pulling weeds. She looked up when she heard my car, and I watched her face cycle through surprise, then joy, then something else, fear. Nora, she stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. This is unexpected. Is everything okay? We need to talk. The fear intensified. She knew. Somehow she knew that I knew. Come inside, she said quietly. I'll make tea. The interior of her house was familiar. I'd been here 100 times over the years, but now I saw it differently. The photos on the mantel, most of them featuring me at various ages. The bookshelf full of the same authors I loved. The color of the walls, a soft green that matched my eyes almost exactly. This wasn't a family friend's house. This was a shrine. How long have you known? Maggie asked, setting 2 cups of tea on the kitchen table. Known what? She gave me a look. Don't, please. I can see it in your face. How long? I took a breath. I found the adoption papers when I was 16, but I just found out about you, about who you really are. Maggie closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. 12 years, she whispered. You've known for 12 years and you never said anything? Neither did you. No.
She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. No, I didn't, and I've regretted it every single day. Maggie told me everything that afternoon. She told me about Catherine, her brilliant, beautiful, troubled older sister who got pregnant at 18 by a boy who disappeared the moment she told him. Catherine had wanted to keep me, had fought to keep me, even when their parents threatened to disown her, even when she had no money, no job, no support. But she couldn't do it. She was alone, terrified, barely more than a child herself. And a social worker convinced her that adoption was the kindest choice, that I deserved stability, a two-parent home, things Catherine couldn't provide. So she signed the papers, and it broke her. She was never the same after, Maggie said, her voice hollow. She dropped out of school, started drinking. She'd drive past your parents' house just to see if she could catch a glimpse of you. That's how the letters started. She'd write them and leave them in the mailbox, and eventually your parents wrote back. They knew? They knew she was watching? They were kind people. They understood how hard it was for her. They sent photos, updates, let her know you were healthy and happy. It was unofficial, off the record, but it gave Catherine some peace. Until she died, Maggie nodded. Until she died. I was 15, she was 21, and I didn't even know you existed until I found her letters after the funeral. I need to pause here and ask you something. Put yourself in Maggie's position. You're 15 years old, you've just lost your sister, and you discover she had a baby, a niece you never knew about, who's living somewhere with another family. What would you do? Would you walk away, let the child live her life undisturbed? Or would you find a way in, find a way to be part of her story, even if it meant lying to everyone for years? Type walk away or find a way in the comments and be honest with yourself, because I've spent weeks thinking about what I would have done in her shoes and I still don't have an answer. It took me years to find you, Maggie continued. The adoption was closed, no records, no names, nothing. But Catherine had kept everything, every letter your parents sent, every photo. The return address was blacked out, but she'd written your parents' names in her diary. Tom and Linda Brennan. My parents, Tom and Linda. I was 18 when I finally tracked them down. I showed up at their door and told them who I was. Catherine's sister, your aunt. What did they say? They were terrified. They thought I was going to try to take you back or expose the adoption or, I don't know, disrupt the life they'd built. Maggie's voice cracked. But I promised them I wouldn't. I just wanted to know you, to be part of your life, even in a small way. I swore I'd never tell you the truth. And they believed you? I think they felt guilty about Catherine, about how things ended. Letting me in was a way to make amends, maybe. Or maybe they just saw how much I needed it. She looked at me with those green eyes. My eyes, I realized now. Our eyes. I've loved you since the moment I saw that first photo, Nora. You were 3 years old, sitting in a pile of autumn leaves, laughing at the camera. You looked so much like her, like Katie. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, that I'd been surrounded by lies my entire life. Grief for the mother I never knew. Gratitude, maybe, that someone had loved me enough to spend 25 years pretending just to be close to me. Everything was tangled together, impossible to separate. Why didn't you ever tell me? I finally asked. Maggie's face crumpled. Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me for lying. Afraid it would destroy your relationship with your parents. Afraid that... She stopped, shook her head. I told myself I was protecting you. But really, I was protecting myself. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you, Nora. You were all I had left of her. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time I'd ever touched her without the invisible barrier between us. I don't hate you, I said. I'm angry. I'm confused.
I have about a million questions, but I don't hate you." She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I know. We sat there for a long time, two women bound by blood and secrets, finally seeing each other clearly. I didn't tell my parents right away. I needed time to process what Maggie had told me, time to decide what I wanted, not what she wanted, not what my parents would want, but what I needed. Dr. Yolanda Chen, the therapist I started seeing 2 weeks after my conversation with Maggie, helped me understand something important. I'd spent 12 years protecting everyone else's feelings. My parents' feelings by not confronting them, Maggie's feelings by not exposing her secret identity, even Catherine's feelings, in some strange way, honoring the choice she made, not disrupting the life she'd wanted for me. But no one had protected my feelings. No one had considered what it might be like to grow up not knowing where you came from, to look in the mirror and see a stranger, to fill out medical forms with question marks, to carry the weight of a secret that wasn't even yours to keep. "You have a right to your own story," Dr. Chen told me. "You have a right to ask questions, to demand answers, to feel however you feel about all of this. Your parents made choices for you when you were too young to consent. That was appropriate then, but you're an adult now. The balance of power has shifted." Those words stayed with me as I drove to my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon in early spring. Mom was in the garden when I arrived, kneeling in the dirt the same way Maggie had been. For a strange, dizzying moment, I saw them as mirrors of each other. Two women who'd spent decades tending to things they couldn't fully control. "Sweetheart," Mom stood up, brushing soil from her knees. "I didn't know you were coming. I should have called. Is Dad home?" "He's inside. Is everything okay? You look pale." "I need to talk to both of you." Something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe? Or dread? "Okay," she said slowly. "Let me wash up." 10 minutes later, the three of us were sitting in the living room. The same living room where I'd opened Christmas presents as a kid, where I'd watched movies curled up between them on the couch, where we'd celebrated every milestone of my carefully constructed life. "I know," I said. No preamble, no easing into it, just the truth, finally, after 12 years. My mother's face went white. "Know what, honey?" Dad asked, still clueless. But Mom knew. I could see it in her eyes, the same fear I'd seen in Maggie's. "I found the adoption papers when I was 16, I continued, "in the attic. I've known for 12 years that I'm not your biological daughter." The silence that followed was absolute. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at the floor. I watched them both, cataloging every micro-expression, every twitch, every sign of the guilt they'd been carrying as long as I'd been carrying my own.
"Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked. "Why did I have to find out from a box in the attic?" Mom started crying, quiet tears, streaming down her cheeks without any sound. "We were going," she whispered. "We planned to tell you when you turned 18, but then you were so happy. You had friends, you were doing well in school, you were applying to colleges, and we kept putting it off. And then it had been so long that we didn't know how to bring it up. We were afraid of how you'd react, afraid you'd think we'd been lying to you. You were lying to me. We were protecting you, or trying to. I know how that sounds now. I know we got it wrong." She finally looked up at me, eyes red and swollen. "Please believe that we love you. We have always loved you. Biology doesn't change that. I know you love me, Mom. That's not the issue. Then what is? The issue is that I've spent 12 years carrying this secret because I was too afraid to have this conversation. 12 years of pretending, 12 years of feeling like I don't know who I am." I took a shaky breath. "I know about Maggie, too." That landed like a bomb. Dad's head snapped up. "What about Maggie?" I know she's Catherine's sister. I know she's my biological aunt. I know you've been letting her into our lives for 25 years without telling me why." Mom put her head in her hands. Dad just stared, mouth slightly open, processing information that clearly didn't compute. "She told you?" Mom finally said. "I found her. I figured it out. And then, yes, she told me." "We never meant for it to go on this long," Mom said, the words tumbling out now. "When she first showed up, you were 3 years old. She was so young, so desperate to be connected to you. We felt sorry for her. And we felt guilty about Catherine, about how isolated she must have been to give you up. Letting Maggie visit seemed like a small kindness. But then years passed," I said, "and the kindness became another lie." "Yes," Mom's voice was barely audible. "Yes, it did." We talked for hours, through dinner, past sunset, into the dark hours of night. I asked every question I'd been holding back for 12 years, about Catherine, about the adoption, about why they'd chosen to keep it secret instead of raising me with the truth. Some of their answers satisfied me, some didn't. But by the end of that long, exhausting night, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a decade: light. The weight wasn't gone, I'm not sure it ever will be, but it had shifted, distributed, shared, among the people who should have been carrying it all along. The next few months were strange. Not bad, exactly, just unfamiliar, like learning to walk again after years of crawling. My parents and I started family therapy. Once a week, we'd sit in Dr. Chen's office and talk about things we'd never talked about before. Their decision to adopt me, their choice to keep it secret, the way those choices had rippled through all of our lives, shaping us in ways we were only beginning to understand. "We thought we were doing the right thing," Dad said in one session. "The advice back then was different. People said adopted kids did better if they were raised as if they were biological. No confusion, no divided loyalties. But you never considered that the secret itself might cause damage?" Dr. Chen asked. "We didn't think of it as damage. We thought of it as protection." "Protection from what?" Dad looked at me, then away. "From feeling different, from wondering if she belonged. We wanted her to feel like she was ours, completely and totally ours." "And did she? Nora, did you feel like you belonged?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Yes and no," I finally said. "I felt loved. I always felt loved. But I also felt like there was something off, something I couldn't put my finger on. I'd look at baby pictures and wonder why I didn't look like anyone. I'd listen to stories about Mom's pregnancy and feel disconnected, like they were talking about someone else." "Because they were," Dr. Chen said gently. "Because they were." My mother cried a lot in those sessions, not manipulatively, just grieving, I think, for the relationship she thought we had and the damage she'd unwittingly caused. My father was quieter, more stoic, but I could see the weight on him too. They weren't villains. That's what I came to understand, slowly over those months of therapy. They were just people, flawed, well-intentioned people who made choices based on incomplete information and outdated advice, and then got trapped by those choices for almost 30 years. I could hate them for it, or I could forgive them. I chose forgiveness, not because they deserved it necessarily, but because I was tired of carrying anger. Anger is heavy, and I'd been carrying enough weight already. Maggie was a different situation. Our relationship had to be rebuilt from scratch. The Aunt Maggie I'd known my whole life didn't exist. She was a character, a performance, designed to give Maggie access to me without revealing the truth. The real Margaret Novak was someone I'd never actually met. We started having dinners together, just the two of us. She'd tell me stories about Catherine, what she was like as a teenager, what she dreamed about, how she laughed. She showed me photos I'd never seen before. Catherine pregnant with me, exhausted and terrified, but smiling anyway. Catherine holding me in the hospital just hours after I was born, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to keep you so badly, Maggie said. She used to talk about all the things she'd teach you: how to ride a bike, how to make her famous chocolate chip cookies, how to stand up for yourself when the world tried to push you around. But she gave me up anyway? Because she loved you more than she loved her own dreams. She knew, or thought she knew, that you'd have a better life with two parents, with stability, with resources she couldn't provide. Was she right? Maggie was quiet for a moment. I don't know, she finally admitted. You had a good childhood. Your parents are good people. But you also spent 12 years feeling like something was wrong, and another 16 years before that not knowing who you really were. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I don't think there are any right answers here, just different kinds of loss. Different kinds of loss. That phrase has stayed with me. About 6 months after my confrontation with my parents, Maggie gave me something, a letter. Catherine wrote this the day before she died, Maggie said. I found it in her apartment with your name on it.
I've been holding on to it for 25 years, waiting for the right moment to give it to you. I think the moment is now. The envelope was yellowed with age. My name was written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize, loopy and messy, like it had been written in a hurry, or in grief. I didn't open it right away. I took it home, set it on my kitchen counter, and stared at it for 3 days. Part of me wanted to tear it open immediately, to finally hear my birth mother's voice, unfiltered by time and other people's interpretations. But another part of me was terrified. What if she was angry? What if she regretted giving me up? What if she said something that would make all of this harder instead of easier? On the 4th day, I finally worked up the courage. My darling girl, the letter began. I don't know when you'll read this. Maybe when you're 18 and curious about where you came from. Maybe when you're 30 and starting a family of your own. Maybe never. Maybe you'll live your whole life not wanting to know, and that's okay too. But just in case you do read this someday, I want you to know some things. First, I love you. I have loved you from the moment I knew you existed, and I will love you until the moment I stop existing, and probably beyond that too if there's any justice in the universe. Giving you up was the hardest thing I've ever done. It nearly killed me. Some days I think it actually did kill a part of me, the part that believed in happy endings. Second, I didn't give you up because I didn't want you. I gave you up because I wanted too much for you. I was 18, alone, broke, and terrified. I could have kept you. I almost did. But what kind of life would that have been? A scared kid raising a scared kid, both of us struggling just to survive. You deserved better than that. You deserved parents who could give you everything I couldn't. Third, I'm sorry for disappearing, for not being there, for making a choice that wasn't mine to make alone. You should have had a say. You should have been able to know me, to decide for yourself whether you wanted me in your life. I took that choice away from you, and I'll never forgive myself for it. But here's the thing I want you to understand, the thing I hope you'll carry with you no matter what else happens. You were not a mistake. You were not unwanted. You were loved. Fiercely, desperately, completely loved from the very beginning. And nothing anyone says, nothing you discover, nothing that happens in your life can ever change that. I am your mother, not because of biology, but because I carried you inside me and felt you kick and dreamed about the person you would become. Your other parents, the ones who raised you, they're your parents too, not instead of me, in addition to me. You have more love than most people ever get.
Don't let anyone make you feel like that's a burden. It's a gift. I hope your life is beautiful. I hope you find people who see you clearly and love you anyway. I hope you get to be all the things I dreamed you would be. And I hope, someday, you can forgive me. Forever and always, your mother, Catherine. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, pressed it to my chest, and wept. For the mother I never knew.
For the life she dreamed I would have. For the forgiveness she asked for and had already, always had. I thought I knew the whole story. I was wrong. It was Maggie who finally told me the truth, the whole truth, about a year after I'd confronted my parents. We were at her house, drinking wine and looking through old photo albums, when she suddenly went quiet. "There's something else," she said. "Something I've been afraid to tell you." My stomach dropped. "What?" "About your father, your biological father." I'd never pushed on this. The adoption papers listed him as unknown, and Catherine's letters never mentioned him by name. I'd assumed he was just some guy who'd bailed, a coward who'd got a teenage girl pregnant and then disappeared. Catherine didn't know who he was, Maggie continued carefully. That's what she always told everyone. But it wasn't true. "What do you mean?" She knew exactly who he was. She just couldn't say. Maggie took a deep breath. "Your father was David Brennan, Tom Brennan's younger brother." The words didn't make sense. I heard them, processed them, but they refused to form a coherent meaning. What? Tom and David grew up in the same town as us. David was 3 years older than Catherine. They dated secretly when she was 17, he was 20. When she got pregnant, he panicked, told her he couldn't be a father, that he wasn't ready. He joined the army 2 months later and shipped out. Never came back. But that would mean that your adoptive father is your biological uncle. Yes. The room was spinning. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor myself to something solid. Does my dad know? Yes. Tom found out years later, after David died overseas. He was going through David's things and found letters from Catherine. That's when he and Linda decided to adopt you. They felt responsible, like they owed it to David and to Catherine to give you a home. Everything I thought I knew was reshaping itself. My parents hadn't just adopted a random baby, they'd adopted their nephew's daughter, their family by blood hidden behind a wall of secrets. Why didn't they tell me? Shame, I think. Guilt. David was the family's black sheep. He'd gotten in trouble before, made bad choices. They didn't want you growing up thinking you came from that. They wanted you to have a clean start. A clean start. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Built on lies. Built on love, Maggie corrected gently. Misguided, complicated, imperfect love, but love nonetheless. I thought about my father, Tom, and the way he'd always looked at me, the fierce protectiveness, the occasional flashes of something like guilt. All these years, I thought he was hiding the adoption. He was hiding so much more. His brother's betrayal, Catherine's suffering, the blood connection he'd never acknowledged. I was his niece, his actual biological niece, and he'd raised me as his daughter without ever saying a word. "I need to talk to him," I said. "I know. I just wanted you to hear it from me first, so you had time to process before you faced him." I drove to my parents' house that night, walked in without knocking, found my father in his study, reading a book, looking older than I'd ever seen him look. "I know about David," I said. He closed the book, set it aside, and when he looked up at me, there were tears in his eyes. "I've wanted to tell you," he said quietly. "Every day for 28 years, I've wanted to tell you." "Then why didn't you?" "Because I was ashamed of my brother, of what he did, of the way our family handled it. sweeping everything under the rug, pretending it never happened. He stood up, crossed the room, stood in front of me. I took you in because I loved you, because you were my blood, whether anyone acknowledged it or not, and I've loved you every day since. But you let me believe I was a stranger, some random baby you adopted out of kindness. I know, and I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. We stood there, father and daughter, or uncle and niece, separated by a lifetime of secrets and the fragile bridge we were trying to build between us. I don't know how to feel about this, I admitted. I know, I don't either. He reached out tentatively and put his hand on my shoulder. But we can figure it out together, if you'll let me. I didn't have an answer, not yet, but I didn't pull away. 2 years later. It's a Sunday afternoon in September, and I'm hosting dinner at my apartment for the first time. Around my table, Mom and Dad, I still call them that because whatever biology says, they're the ones who raised me. Aunt Maggie, I still call her that too, but now it means something different, something real. And two new additions: my husband James, who I met in group therapy of all places, and my daughter Catherine, who is 6 months old and has my green eyes and her father's dimples. We named her after my birth mother. It felt right. She has the Novak chin, Maggie says, tickling Catherine's belly. Katie had that same stubborn little chin. And the Brennan stubbornness, Dad adds. God help us all. Everyone laughs, even me. 2 years ago, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to sit in a room with these people and feel anything but anger and grief. The revelations had come in waves, each one knocking me down, forcing me to rebuild my understanding of who I was and where I came from. But here's what I've learned. Identity isn't a fixed thing. It's not a puzzle with one correct solution. It's more like a river, constantly moving, constantly changing shape, fed by 1,000 different sources. I am Nora Brennan, the woman my parents raised. I am baby girl Novak, the child Catherine loved too much to keep. I am the niece of the man who calls himself my father, and the granddaughter of people who kept secrets to protect themselves and each other. I am all of these things, and I am none of them. I am something new, something that emerged from the collision of all these hidden histories. The secrets almost destroyed us. Almost. But they also brought us here, to this table, to this moment. A family that doesn't look like any family tree could diagram, patched together from adoption papers and hidden letters and years of therapy and the slow, painful work of learning to tell the truth. James squeezes my hand under the table. You okay? Yeah, I say, and I mean it. I'm okay. After dinner, when everyone has gone home and Catherine is asleep in her crib, I sit in my living room and look at the photos on the mantle. My parents at their wedding, Maggie in her garden, Catherine, the first Catherine, holding me in the hospital, both of us brand new to the world, and now a new photo, taken last month, 4 generations of complicated, imperfect love. My mother holding my daughter, both of them laughing at something off camera. I used to think secrets were poison, that the truth was always better, no matter how painful. But now I'm not so sure. The secrets my family kept were wrong. I believe that. They caused damage that took years to repair, damage that might never fully heal. But they were also acts of love, misguided, fearful, imperfect love, but love nonetheless. My birth mother gave me up because she loved me too much to keep me. My parents hid the truth because they loved me too much to risk losing me. Maggie spent 25 years pretending because she loved me too much to stay away. None of that makes what they did right, but it makes it human, and maybe that's all any of us can hope for: to be human, to make mistakes, to love imperfectly, and to keep trying anyway. Catherine stirs in her sleep, lets out a small cry, then settles again. I watch her chest rise and fall, this tiny person who carries the DNA of so many complicated people, who will someday ask questions about where she came from. I'll tell her the truth, all of it, not because she deserves to be burdened with our messy history, but because she deserves to know that she comes from people who loved fiercely, even when they got it wrong. She deserves to know that family isn't just blood or legal documents or the stories we tell ourselves. It's the choice to show up, again and again, even when it's hard. That's what I'll tell her when she's ready. That's what I wish someone had told me. So that's my story. 12 years of carrying a secret I didn't ask for. A birth mother who loved me from a distance. A father who was my uncle all along. A family built on hidden truths that nearly collapsed under their weight. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you think my parents were right to keep the adoption secret? Do you think Maggie was right to spend 25 years pretending? Some people say honesty is always the best policy, that children have a right to know where they come from, no matter how complicated the truth. Others say some things are better left unsaid, that protecting people we love sometimes means keeping hard truths to ourselves. What do you believe? Type always tell or sometimes protect in the comments. And if you've ever carried a family secret or discovered one that changed everything, I want to hear your story. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that none of us are alone in this. Every family has its hidden rooms, its locked boxes, its truths that only come out in the middle of the night. The question is what we do when those boxes finally open. Do we let the secrets destroy us, or do we take the broken pieces and build something new? I chose to build. I hope you will too.